All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you go to the description, sign up for Patreon, become a channel member, all of those cool things. Today, Dave Root of Tesla is here. I first met Dave. He's the new guy in Tesla. He's not the new guy anymore, but he was. Of course, I probably met him 15 years ago, and I believe he's been in the band for 17 years. It's sort of like how Ron Wood would be the new guy in the Rolling Stones. But Dave's got a great story about how he became a member of Tesla. Who would think that MySpace would have been such a useful tool? We'll talk about that. And then a brand new live album from Tesla. These guys keep cranking out the music. This one's called Full Throttle Live. It's available everywhere right now. Link in the description. We're going to talk to Dave about that and more right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Time seems too good to be true. Nobody out there can waste time without you. All right, welcome, Dave Root.
What's happening?
How are you, Dave?
I'm great, man. Glad to be here.
First things first. Your name, Rude. You're the least rude person I think I've ever known.
Well, thank you.
I mean, it's very punk rock. It's a great name.
It was a shortened version of my real name that started out as a joke like hella years ago in club bands, and it was like, oh, it's like your punk rock name, and it kind of stuck. So I was like, all right, yeah. By the time I was in Tesla, I was like, it works better as like a stage name.
Yeah, well, it is a very punk rock name, but people hear your music with Dave Root Band, they realize there's a lot more to that. And as I said, you're a very nice guy. So I feel like having you on, we're long overdue. My Tesla series of interviews has been going on for a little while. Tommy's been on a few times, several times. Brian Wheat was on. Steve Brown, who really is the new guy now, he's been on. And so, but I think when I first met you, you came out to play with a band called Sin City Sinners that I put together here in Las Vegas with a bunch of talented guys. And I think it was Dive Bar, was it?
Yeah, it was Dive Bar. I remember that. It was like, I feel like it was like a Tuesday, and that was like the happening night, and a friend of mine hooked me up with Brent Muscat, who was doing it at that point, and I set it up through him, and we were doing like my solo band was doing a little West Coast van tour thing, and that was our Vegas show, and it was so fun. Like, it was like sparsely attended, but a small but mighty crowd. It was a really fun night, and Sin City Sinners, obviously, right, we were opening, and Todd Kearns was in it pre-Slash, and we ended up jamming with him. And I remember we did Paradise City, and he sang it and fucking killed it. I remember and I always remember like, damn, that dude in Vegas was amazing, and like we actually stayed in touch. And then we've just been friends ever since that show. And then like a year or two later, he joined Slash, and it was just all like, oh wow. And so now we've seen each other a bunch of times.
We always knew that band couldn't last, especially with talents like Todd's, that eventually someone would hear it. I said he was the best rock star that America just didn't know about yet. And and so we had that fun little Tuesday night jam, which was great. And listen, I kept it going for a lot of years with different members and different lineups. But it was a fun thing and a great way to meet new people. And now I'm remembering it. It was because, you were doing the Dave Root Band. And so it was a cool thing to do that and then have you jam with Sinners as well. So, and I've seen Tesla so many times since that show. And now when I'm on the road with Stephen Pearcy, I see you guys constantly. I feel like, we saw you in Key West, saw you on the cruise. And I said, I got to have Dave on the show. And sometimes I feel like, when you interview somebody, you've told a lot of these stories before, for you to have to, but there's always somebody new watching. And I think that's a good place to start. People want to know about how you got in Tesla. You started playing guitar extremely young, right?
Yeah, definitely on the younger side. I started right when I turned 9. So, a couple years earlier than usual.
What were you learning when you were 9?
The basics, right? Chords. I started on an acoustic guitar, and I didn't I didn't play an electric until 4 years later. And I think that really helped a lot, just learning that. I mean, like old folk songs and country and rockabilly and blues and Beatles and early rock and roll, that, Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and all that stuff, which I loved all that at the time. I mean, I still do, but so I grew up a lot of that sort of country bluegrass acoustic music kind of thing. I learned how to do finger picking. I didn't have a flat pick till I was like 12, Anyways, yeah, so it was a lucky thing that I was able to stick with it. My mom really helped me, stick to practicing and get over that sort of obstacle of where it finally kind of makes sense after a while. And yeah, very lucky.
Well, those beginnings sound perfect for Tesla. When you think about it,
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
it sounds like it might be a destined for you. So okay, so you're playing and you play around town. You're from the Bay Area, right?
Yep. San Francisco area, and did club bands and that whole thing, and just was, doing the thing that everyone does, right? Just trying to make it, and, had like part-time jobs, but focus was just in whatever band I was in, trying to, go big.
I mentioned MySpace in the introduction. The people who remember the MySpace, there was the top 8, and you got to Facebook and Instagram don't have the top 8, but you had the top 8, and you had your favorite people or whatever in there. Frank Hannon was on MySpace, right?
Yeah, dude. It was random. He hit up a guy that is a mutual friend of ours, but I didn't know they knew each other. He was just a friend of mine from the Bay. He was in some other club bands, and he hit him up about coming to jam. And he's super busy. He's got his own business. He's doing great. He's got bands. So he's like, I don't really have time, but they were on the phone, and like literally, like I think he was looking at his MySpace on the phone, and he saw the top 8. He's like, well, who's this guy Dave Rude? Because it was like, I had a shot from like a club show that we had done, but it was like a pro shot, picture, and it looked really cool. It was like slitty and hair back and Les Paul. And I'm like, well, who's that guy? He looks like a rock and roller. And it's like, oh, Dave, yeah, he's cool. You should hit him up. And he sent me an email on MySpace, and I was out working, and I came back for work that day and saw it, and I was like, oh my God, what? And 3 days later, I was up in Sacramento at a solo Frank Hannon show, and I sat in and jammed with him. It was really, really cool.
Do you think I've known this story for a while, but do you think your friend ever regretted it?
No, we're still buddies, and I don't think so. And I think, because he's his name's Craig Bearhorse, and he runs a really successful T-shirt screen printing business. He's done stuff for Tesla. He's done big Metallica, like all these big bands, and he's in a band called the Butlers, which Billy Rowe from Jet Boy was in for a long time. Yeah. And he also was originally in the Ruffians, with this 80s sort of like metal band from the Bay that still is known. They'll still go tour Europe, and I think he probably wouldn't want to left all that stuff. He had so much going on at home. It would have been a lot to give up. Yeah. So I've never got. Yeah, I think he's cool with it, and we're still buddies. He'll still come see Tesla shows and hang. Yeah. It's a good vibe, luckily.
The road isn't for everybody, and if you're running a business, sometimes you're better. That's what you're meant to do. Right. The travel schedule. You're joining us from a hotel room right now, right before sound check.
Yes.
Tesla. This becomes life.
Yep. Exactly. This becomes life.
You're in the Frank Hannon band first. I'd say this is probably 2005, right?
It was 06, and it all happened really quick. It was like early 06, and so I went up in jams. He happened to have this solo show already booked in Sacramento, and it was packed. He's really big in Sac, and he had a bunch of guest guitar players sitting in throughout the night, and I was one of them, and we met before the show and hung out and went to his house and jammed a little in his garage, like while the opening bands were playing at the club, and he did tell me that night, like, hey, it's trying to find someone to be in my solo band, but it's really sort of a training period to find somebody for Tesla in the summertime, and it definitely officially blew my mind, like, wait, what? It was crazy. because I had no idea or anything. And then went back to the gig and sat in and did some songs. There's YouTube of it. It was really fun. We did Walk This Way and Stranglehold. And it went great. And he was super excited, and so was I. And the next, like 2 days later, he drove down to the Bay Area and we jammed in the studio I was in. And, so I was in Frank and and we did some tours, which were like so much fun, RV tours. I'd never really been on a tour for more than like, a week. And it was really, really good experience. And we were doing a lot of Tesla songs and went all over the country. And again, we hadn't announced it or anything, but we all knew it was training for Tesla. So it was like 90%, Tesla songs at these shows. And then we'd be back home in between runs. I'd go meet the other guys in the band, and it just sort of slowly built. And it was like, okay, cool. So by June, I was in the band and we were touring. It was really fast and, very surreal. And I was in his band for probably a year. It was just after a while, Tesla got so busy and I was doing my solo thing, and then he also stopped doing shows for a while. So, that kind of is how it started, man. Just really luck.
That first night you jammed and there was other guitar players, was there anyone there that we might know?
No famous guys. There was a dude, I think Scott Johnson was there, who I've met a couple times, and he had filled in Tesla before, like a couple years before, at doing some last minute things on a run or two. And so, maybe if any Tesla fans have been at a show that he had filled in for, maybe. But, that was a long time ago. Other guys, like people who were known in the Bay or in Sacramento, but I mean, I didn't know them. I kind of know some of them now, like, oh yeah, they were all great players, But again, I didn't know it was an audition. I thought he was just having people sit in. I didn't really know he was kind of like taking stock of how it went with each guy. Like, which thank God, because, man, I've never really done like an audition for a band, and I would have been just too nervous and because I already didn't know anybody, and to think you're just going up to jam and like maybe I'll go out on a club tour is different than like we're looking for the new guy in Tesla, because I grew up loving Tesla, so it would have been a bit of a mind fuck,
Yeah, and Tommy Skeoch was very beloved. He still is. He's got his own music out there now, and I think some of the guys have mended fences, which is a nice thing. But you had big shoes to fill, and you've said before that you were a Tesla fan and you were a Tommy fan as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I was a big fan of the band. So, and the first record I got was the acoustic record, which probably resonated from being originally an acoustic player, and that was sort of my introduction in that, and Psychotic Supper, and those records were really big for me, and I think we come from the same sort of musical DNA, like that, blues rock riffs, Les Paul and a Marshall solos, and Aerosmith, that feel, the Aerosmith Zeppelin thing, and so a lot of my influences were the same as the other guys in Tesla, even though I was younger. Musically, it just fit right away. It wasn't like, oh, this weird young dude who's got different tastes. It was like I was like an old young guy, and like it was like yes, I might as well have been there in the club days. It would have felt right. We still listen to the same. We were like, oh yeah, man, Aerosmith live bootleg, fucking love that record. It was this. We grew up on the same stuff a lot of the time, so it really fit, and so felt really natural and organic, and it just, me and Frank, our styles just mixed really well. Just right off the bat, we've never had to think about it. Like a lot of the stuff we do when there's twin guitars. I mean, the important ones we do, of course, note for note, but a lot of times we were just making shit up, and it just works because we know how to play with each other. Our styles work.
Changing a member is never an easy thing, especially a band like Tesla that had that lineup for so long. I feel like you were welcomed. I feel like you were a great choice. And as you said, you paid respect to those songs, that the prime ones, note for note and things like that. And I think people really were excited. And, Brian has said that you really maybe saved Tesla, added some new blood and gave them the kick that they needed.
It was such a great sort of vibe and sort of family thing to walk in on. I was very just lucky in that they were all like so open and supportive and all of that. There was never new guys thing. There was no like a separation or like no dude, you don't like go outside. You're not in on this conversation. It was like I was just in the band all of a sudden. I was like, whoa, which I mean, especially now looking back, because it's been almost 20 years, and I'm like, how would you have the faith in some kid to just let him into like your organization like that? Like it'd be nerve-wracking. So kudos again on top to them for taking a chance and being cool and being like, yeah, you got any riffs? Let's do it. Let's write some songs and like, yeah, make up your own solo. Like, oh, cool, because there's parts where I do improvise and stuff where like me and Frank are going off, or there's things where I do change it. There's certain ones where I keep exactly like the record, and other ones where there's more freedom. Same with Frank. Some solos, even on the classic hits, he changes every night. Some of them he plays exactly the night, so it's exactly the same. So we both kind of have that, and again, it's sort of an instinctual thing. But the guys were always so cool, and it just felt very natural.
Yeah, and it showed. So I want to talk a little bit because I joke about you being the new guy in Tesla. Everybody made that for a long time, even though you've been there. Like you said, we're going to approach 20 years at some point. But you've done a lot in that time. It wasn't just playing the songs and the records; they were already there. You recorded, and Tesla's always cranking out some live music. And so I want to look at a little bit, and you'll tell me a little bit. This is your website. People can go to it, daverude.com. We're looking at the discography. And let's see here. Let's see if we can get this in order.
Yeah.
Starting at the bottom.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about some of is this the first thing you were involved in, the Alive in Europe?
No, it's
sorry, that's 10.
Yeah, it's kind of weird looking at, I guess, the way I haven't looked at my.
I'm going to find it. Hold on. It looks like
Real is the first one.
Yes, right here.
Right, and so that was a blast, man. That was, again, looking back, it's so crazy that they like were down to have me on a record. I had been in the band like 3 months. Like damn, dude, you don't know anyone after 3 months, but it just worked. And we did that summer tour, which I did my first show with Tesla in June, and by like October or something, we were in the studio making that record. And it was all covers, but it was really, really fun. The whole point was to do it live on tape, live in the studio with minimal overdubs. And we did. We went out and lived in the middle of nowhere in Texas and really just dove in. We were there for weeks at a time, a couple of different sessions of it. And that was a perfect introduction to working together, because it would have been probably a lot of stress to like, okay, now let's write a new record together when you've only been there for 3 months. So I'm glad that it came out like this as a cover record, and it did well, and people really liked it. People to this day really like a lot of the songs. We still do Thank You and stuff from that record. And then a year or two later, we started working on Forevermore, which was like the first original record. And man, that was so fun too. Like that was one where I did get to co-write songs. I wrote a bunch of songs on that record, and it was a blast.
Yeah, so this came out October 7th, 2008. So it's not, like you said, it's not long before you're on record, original record.
Yeah, it was great. It was super fun, and we got to work with Terry Thomas, who's an amazing producer. He had done the Busted Nut record, back in the 90s. Right. Still great. So that was cool. Yeah, and then Alive in Europe, that was sort of a quick release. It was like all of a sudden like, oh, we have a live record. It was like, because I think it was mostly released in Europe. But in those days, right, the first couple years I was in the band, we were touring Europe all the time. We'd go over there once a year, sometimes twice. So there were a lot of great festival dates, and band's a little smaller over there, so kind of smaller club and theater shows, but always like packed and great energy and really fun. Yeah.
Okay. And so that's Alive in Europe. That was 2010. 2011 is Twisted Wires.
Yes. Yeah, we did. That was mostly older stuff. There's one that I'm on called Second Street. That was the only actual new song on that record. But it was, I always liked that song. We did that live for like a year. And so Twisted Wire set up a whole acoustic tour where like pretty much a whole year, all we did was all acoustic shows. That was a lot of fun to do that.
And then 2014, Simplicity.
Yeah, Simplicity was another original one. That was great. We went out to Virginia and stayed in this house and set up a whole live band set up in the living room and all stayed there and wrote songs together and just sort of jammed and came back to B-Dub's studio in Sacramento, and we did it there. And that one was more of a live in the studio, old school way also, because Forevermore was super modern. That one was like Pro Tools and tons of multi-tracks and being on a more modern radio style. Then Simplicity was more like, let's just do our thing in an organic way. So that was a really fun one. And then we did the live Mechanical Resonance. That was super fun because that was when we were out with Def Leppard, and all the shows were just massive. Like they were all sold out arenas, and so people would show up early when they saw that Tesla was on the bill. So it was pretty much playing to full arenas every night, even though we were opening, and we would record one or two songs from that record per night because we couldn't, we're an opening band, we can't play album start to finish, but we would throw in like two songs specifically for that record on this night, next night to a different couple songs until we had the whole album.
It's the perfect tour because I know a lot of people were exposed to Tesla opening for Def Leppard. That a lot of my friends told me that first time they had seen Tesla was opening for Def Leppard. So what a perfect time to record that, and then to keep the Def Leppard connection going. Shock is produced by Phil Collins.
Yeah, it all came from that because we were out with them. We spent about 3 years where that was the bulk of our touring, was opening for Def Leppard, and it went really well. For a while, we had their manager was managing us too for a few years, and that was killer. And we spent a lot of time with Phil, and the idea came. So on the live record, we did one like bonus studio track, which is a song that Phil had written, and he thought, oh, this would be great for Tesla. So did it, put it on the live record as a bonus track, and it was sort of, it worked really well working together. It was fun. It was like, oh, that was cool. What about doing a real record? So we had this thing where Phil produced it, but it was all original stuff that we wrote, and collaborated with Phil too on a lot of the songs, and because we were together all the time, we made 90% of that record on tour in dressing rooms and hotel rooms, and before Def Leppard sound checks, we'd be in some dressing room that's set up with a Pro Tools rig and or Phil's bus. Like we were everywhere, hotel rooms. It was a fun way to make a record, and because you were there all the time, so you're always sort of halfway in the studio. It's great.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun way to do it, and to take advantage of everybody being in the same place at the same time. That's not always. People live in different parts of the country, so
absolutely.
You had to be together. So an interesting thing I was seeing is that there's two people listed as subbing for you at gigs. One is Phil Collins. It says he subbed for you at the Classic Rock Awards in 2016.
Right. That's funny. That technically, I guess that's true. Yeah. Okay.
What happened?
So that. It wasn't really subbing for, but it's funny. That's a fact now. No, it was. I think it was like December, and we had a few months off, and Classic Rock Awards were happening in Japan, and that was right when we had the same management, and we're very intertwined with the Leppard camp. And I don't think Tesla got an award or anything, but for some reason they wanted. Jeff and Frank and Brian to come over, and I don't even know if it was because it wasn't like it was a whole band thing and I couldn't make it. It wasn't. Troy didn't go either. It was just those three guys went, and they kind of had there was like a house band, like the most amazing house band, the DeLeo brothers from STP and all these other huge legends that were sitting in and jamming, and I think that was it because Jeff and Frank and Brian were there, that they did like 2 or 3 Tesla songs with sort of a mixture band guys behind him, and Phil was there doing whatever Leppard was doing. So it wasn't really a proper show to begin with. It wasn't ever
Yeah, I'd
supposed
say
to
it's
be.
more of a jam. Yeah,
It was a jam thing, but I think they did Cowboy or something, and so like Phil like played my part. It was fun. It's pretty crazy to think.
if that's what it's considered, you had a pretty cool sub, and
Yes,
then
pretty good. Yeah.
uh, and then there's another guy, and his name is Tommy Armstrong Levitt, and they say subbed for you in 2013.
Yeah, he did 2 or 3 shows because we had originally had this long chunk of time off, and my wife and I had a baby, right? So she was pregnant, and her due date was right in, which again was originally the middle of nothing, so it was no big deal. But then we got these shows popped up, like, oh man, guys, that's like the week that she's supposed to be having our kid, and it's our only kid. Like, I can't be gone. So it was the Monsters of Rock cruise. So I missed one of those, and so I guess technically that's 2 shows, right? Because we usually do 2 nights on that boat. So he filled in for that, and then also some weird last minute like 5-day Europe tour, which I still don't even know what happened, but so he covered that too, and that one sounded like a nightmare. So it was like they like played the gig, flew somewhere else, played a gig, and then flew home, like just like no sleep kind of thing. So not glad to miss it, but if I had to miss one, it was nice to miss one where you're pretty much flying everywhere.
And then the other one is paternity leave, so that's understandable.
Paternity leave, so that's it. So it was just a few shows, and it's weird, I don't like to not be there. It's just an unnerving kind of feeling. Not anything bad. It's just like I'm supposed to be there, but sometimes there's a good reason.
Well, and that's the life of the music business, that you're going to miss events. Some you have to. You didn't have shows at the time of your child being born, so you figured you were safe. But there's so much traveling and putting things aside and missing events, and you've been playing so many shows for Tesla now, and Tesla's really done a great job of keeping the brand and the value up. I feel like Tesla hasn't. Some bands it's hard to stay as a headliner or keep it going, whereas Tesla seems to reinvent itself and stay popular and build new fans as well as the old fans. The Las Vegas residency, people thought this is crazy. For Las Vegas is for Bruno Mars and Aerosmith and who Madonna or whatever the residency is. But Tesla does the House of Blues. I believe it was 5 shows, and pretty much all sold out.
Yeah.
So successful, you're doing it again.
I mean, like, who would have thought? It was so fun. I always would look at like those bigger arena bands that would do that. Be like, oh man, that would be so fun. But oh well, we'll never be able to do that because it's only these giant, arena kind of things. But then all of a sudden it's like, wait, we're doing a what? Cool. And it was amazing. Like, I like Vegas, and it was just a fun, surreal kind of thing to do, and the shows were great. Every show was sold out, and again, we're coming back in a couple months, so I was very, excited because I do think there's only so many of those big arena bands left, and they've done the thing in Vegas, or they don't want to, or whatever, and so sooner or later you're going to run out of bands, and there might be more bands on our level that will start doing those kind of residencies.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think people are starting to appreciate it more. You guys also have a good idea of what fans want to change the set list. The sets weren't the same. Sometimes you get some deeper songs, which I enjoy. So we're talking about Tesla now. Right around the pandemic time, Troy takes some time off. Troy Luccketta, original drummer, and everyone sort of speculates what happens if he's coming back. Brian says in my interview he doesn't expect to see him back. When these kind of things are happening, you are a member of the band. You're not a hired guy. But when these things are happening, are you involved, or do you just let them sort it out?
I mean, it depends on it's sometimes it's just like, oh, okay, I guess this is happening now, and at other times I'm more involved when it's creative stuff, writing and recording and all that, you know, and other things like that, you know, definitely less involved. So, you know, then just all of a sudden, cogs have moved and things have changed a little bit, and you know, now we're here, you know.
Have you spoke to Troy since? Because you knew him before Tesla.
Well, I no, you know, I actually never did.
Excuse me, you met him at your first rehearsal.
Yes, exactly, and yeah, which was funny. I mean, like, again, like, really, like, I hadn't even met the guy. He lived in another state at that point. He was the only guy out of state, and so I met him the first day we rehearsed. We were going to do our first show in like 3 days. You know, it's like, what if he didn't like me? I'm just some punk, you know. But it worked out great because Troy's a sweetheart, and it was awesome. But I know I haven't talked to him since. No, you know, I hope too soon, you know.
Yeah, it's one of these things that maybe it's for the best. Business things happen and people make different decisions. I think he's been playing with the Guess Who
I've heard that.
recently, and you know, to have a band with the career length of Tesla, things happen, personalities happen, people do their own thing. There is a live album available right now, which features Steve Brown on it as well. This will be his first recording with the band, and this is
Right.
Full Throttle Live, and it is available. Link in the description. Tell me a little about this.
Oh man, that record, it just came out like a week ago, and I actually hadn't heard the whole thing. I listened to it when we had a week off, and I listened to it. I went on a walk and listened to the whole thing. Like, man, this sounds great. You know, I heard it when we were doing, like, when Brian was doing rough mixes of it, and yeah, it's a big rock record, and you know, it's more of a diehard thing because it doesn't have a lot of hits, right? There's been a million live Tesla releases, right? That you know, when you hear Signs or Susie, you can find one. You know, the world doesn't need another live version of those, right? But this is cool because we got to put out the deeper cuts. And a lot of them we do live all the time, but you know, they're longer songs, they're heavier songs. So, you know, I mean, Lazy Days, Crazy Nights, always one of my favorites to do.
Me too.
Miles Away, that's just so heavy, and you know, it was a cool thing. And then the newer songs, you know, it just sort of evolved to be like, well, let's make it a whole album, and like on purpose the songs that are not ever on live records, because usually you put out a live record, people want the hits, but again, there's a bunch of those, so it's a nice angle to do something a little different. And you know, there's just tons of guitar, and it's a big rock record.
Yeah, and I think again that's what I think Tesla's so good at. You know, people want product and want it to be a little bit different, so that you know you never can get bored when you get to hear different you know, different things. We've talked a lot about Tesla, obviously, but you have your own music and you have your own band, Dave Rude Band, and you have a record coming out on Rat Pack Records later this year. Is this a solo record or Dave Rude Band?
So, I mean, it's a solo record for sure. It's actually, we're not even calling it. We dropped the band. It's just Dave Rude, you know, because it before originally was a band, right? We were using my name because, you know, like I was in Tesla, so like we're hoping to get more people. But originally, like that, those first 5 years I was in Tesla, I was also doing my solo thing, and we were out in a van doing gigs, booking tours, and it was like this whole DIY thing, and it was great. It was a lot of fun. But after that, I moved more into songwriting and started going to Nashville and writing with other writers and trying to get cuts on other people's albums, which is really still my main focus outside of the band. But in doing that and writing all the time, like, man, I think I might want to do a new solo record, and actually just a solo record where I'm just writing songs. It's really, again, like this, writing songs in hotel rooms. I had my Pro Tools rig out with me, and I recorded a lot of stuff in hotel rooms and dressing rooms and all that, and then went to Brian's studio in Sac and did real drums and did real vocals, and you know, basically that was it. And so this one, I played everything except the drums, all the vocals. So it's more of a solo album, but I do, you know, hope that I can maybe do some shows around it, you know, when it comes out. Like, I just have a different perspective on it now, where it's more of just something fun to do, without really the pressure that was originally there, where I was, you know, really trying to make it its own thing. It's like put out a record, songs are cool, I think people would like to come, you know, see some guitar rock and have a drink, you know?
Does this record have a title yet or not yet?
Yeah. The record's called Through the Fire, and that's the song on the album too. Just a couple days ago, right before I flew out here, we shot a video for the first single, which is a song called Hell and Back. And video came out great. I already saw like a rough cut of it, and it's super exciting, cool, just sort of live rock and roll looking type video that that'll come out probably pretty soon. That'll come before the record. That was really the last piece of the puzzle we needed. Like I had to do that. Already did an EPK, already did photos, you know, all the stuff that you have to line up for the lead up on an album. That was the last piece. So once we get the final edit, then, you know, we'll have a solid release date. But yeah, you know, sometime probably fall or toward the end of this year, which is crazy because, I mean, that record, man, I've been working on it for so long, pieces and here and there. I mean, I wrote some of those riffs before Simplicity, you know.
Yeah, so yeah, it's that relief to know that it's actually going to be out and people will hear it and you can perform it.
Right.
So that's DaveRue.com is the place to get all the information on that and his past music as well. And there's merchandise and information. So I recommend people check that out. Dave, people love to know about the day in the life of a musician. I film a tour diary while we tour with Stephen Pearcy, where I did it on the cruise too, where I show what a day is like. I think some people are usually disappointed at how not excited it is. But where are you today?
I'm in Wendover, Nevada.
Okay.
It's a couple hours outside of Salt Lake. So we flew to Salt Lake last night, drove here on a bus. And it's a really cool thing we do here. It's, I guess, probably since before the pandemic, but we were doing this about once a year. And it's a, you know, fun, you know, we're in a casino and then there's like a theater. You have to kind of drive to it. It's next door. And we do it, you know, pretty regularly, and it's fun. You know, it's kind of a destination thing where there's not like a city here. You have to drive in a couple hours from somewhere on either side. So people come here to do like, you know, their rock and roll party weekend and see a rock show and do some gambling, I guess, and head out. So you know, yeah, it's not what most people think of. Like I woke up, I played guitar, wrote a little song idea, did some emailing shit I had to do, went to the gym.
You're using your time at least.
What's that?
You're using your time at least. Some guys just stay in bed.
Oh my God, no, I know. That's the thing, because there's so much dead time and there's so much boredom, and like you could see how you could easily get in trouble, right? You know, but I don't know. I want to do stuff. I like to write and play and exercise. Those are two big things through the day that, if nothing else, give you a direction and something to fill the time. And because it's a lot of hurry up and wait. Like you can't really leave. Like, well, I don't have to do anything for a couple hours, but you can't really go. You can't like go to a movie because you're gonna have to be back here. And what if you get stuck in traffic, or there's gonna be something so you kind of just have to sit around and, you know, wait and find stuff that you can do nearby and make the best of it.
This is why residencies are so great. To me, the best part of the residency is 2 nights in the same bed, 5 nights in the same bed. How great!
It's insane. Like we've done a few of those where we do 2 nights in the same place, and it's always so weird to like leave the gear at the end of the night. Like, whoa! Like no one's like rustling, pulling cables. It's just there. And to do it for a whole week, it was crazy. Like it was very weird.
Yeah, you love to look at you love to see an itinerary with. Wow, a casino, 2 nights. I go back to my room and there's nothing to set up tomorrow.
Right. I mean, like tonight we got these cool room today, but after the gig we're getting on the bus and driving, which is fine. Like I love it, but you know, it's a rare occurrence when you actually get to stay overnight, a whole night in your own room. Like very rare. So it's nice.
Where are you off to next?
We're doing Lincoln tomorrow. That's Thunder Valley, which is basically Sacramento. This really cool venue that they just opened a brand new theater there. We used to do their outdoor thing. It was like 5,000-6,000, and it's basically a hometown show, so it's always packed and just really electric kind of energy. And they just recently opened up a brand new indoor venue, so this will be our first time doing that. And yeah, looking forward to that. It'll be cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
and Buck Cherry's on the bill too. I love those guys, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, they're here in Las Vegas right now. It's funny how everybody meets
Oh,
up.
where are they playing?
Brooklyn Bowl. I don't know if you know that spot.
I've heard a lot about it. It seems like a cool
Nice.
spot.
It's on the Strip. It was originally a club in New York, but they have one out here, branded. And but it's funny how everyone sort of meets up at one place or another. If you do enough of these shows, TeslaTheBand.com is the place to get tour dates. People should go out and see it. You won't be disappointed. I look forward to seeing you, if not before the residency, at the residency. Last time I was traveling, this time I will be there for sure. I look forward to
Oh,
hearing
well,
some
hey.
great Tesla music. And when the record comes out, maybe you come back on the live show and we'll promote that as well so people can hear some new original music too.
I would love to, man. Let's do it.
Great, Dave. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was a blast talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching.